Students, faculty, regents, and friends of the University of Michigan, welcome. My name is Mia Kerwin, and I'm the president of Facts on the Ground, also known as FOG at Michigan.
And I'm Anna Robb, FOG's Director of Communications. We are so honored to have you all here with us tonight.
Facts on the Ground is a student organization committed to clearing the fog of disinformation surrounding the Middle East on our campus. Through educational initiatives that promote fact-based dialogue, we create opportunities for constructive conversations on the geopolitical realities shaping our world.
Over the past year, the war in the Middle East has sent shockwaves through global politics, the media, and our campus. As students, educators, and members of this community, we share a collective responsibility to engage in dialogue that can lead to a pathway forward. But these conversations must be rooted in facts and historical truth.
Many of us in this room tonight are deeply invested in politics, in our country, and in the world around us. We've been asking ourselves questions like, what is the role of the US in the Middle East? What does the day after look like for Gaza? And how is the war reshaping regional alliances?
To help us navigate these questions, we are honored to welcome two distinguished experts, Van Jones and Hussain Abdul-Hussain, both of whom bring deep knowledge and diverse perspectives to this conversation.
It is now my pleasure to invite Sam Heller to the stage to introduce tonight's speakers.
Thank you all so much for being here tonight. It's my pleasure to be able to introduce our two amazing speakers. So our first speaker is a research fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, who's built a career focusing on geopolitics throughout the entirety of the Middle East. With his unique background as an Iraqi and Lebanese-raised former journalist who has since become an outspoken voice for democracy and liberty, Hussain Abdul-Hussain remains one of the world's foremost experts on Middle East relations in a time of growing unrest in the region. Hussain focused specifically on the Gulf region and Yemen, including Gulf relations with Iran and Gulf peace with Israel. Born and raised in Beirut, Baghdad, and Baalbek, cities that have been the theater of major Middle Eastern events, Hussain earned a degree in history and archaeology from the American University in Beirut, after which he worked as a reporter and later managing editor at Beirut's The Daily Star. He's reported from war zones on the Lebanese border with Israel and from Iraq. In Washington, Hussain helped set up and manage the Arabic satellite network Al-Hurra Iraq, after which he headed to the Washington Bureau of Kuwaiti Daily El-Rai. Hussain has worked as a visiting fellow with London's Chatham House, and he has published in English in the New York Times and the Washington Post, and in Arabic in various publications. His analysis has been quoted by Vox, the Jerusalem Post, and Newsweek. He has appeared on CNN and MSNBC, and he is a frequent commentator on major Arabic satellite networks. It is a pleasure to have somebody with such unique perspectives like Hussain here to provide insight and education for all of us. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Hussain Abdul-Hussain. Our next speaker is one of the most prominent names in today's media. Van Jones is a CNN host, a political commentator, an Emmy award-winning producer, and the author of 3 New York Times best-selling books, The Green Collar Economy, Rebuild the Dream, and Beyond the Messy Truth, How We Came Apart and How We Come Together. Van has also found success as a social entrepreneur, having founded and led many thriving enterprises, including the Reform Alliance, the Color of Change, the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, and the Dream.org. In 2009, as the Green Jobs Advisor to Obama's White House, Van oversaw an $80 billion investment in clean energy jobs. Van was the main advocate for the Green Jobs Act, which was signed into law by George W. Bush in 2007. During the Obama administration, the legislation resulted in $500 million in national funding for green jobs training. Van has stewarded several bipartisan legislative and advocacy efforts, racking up wins under the last 5 US presidents: Clinton, Bush, Obama, Biden, and Trump. Van's most recent victory was advocating successfully for the passage of the First Step Act, which the New York Times calls the most substantial breakthrough in criminal justice in the entire generation. A Yale-educated attorney, Van has won numerous awards, including the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leader, Rolling Stone's 12 Leaders Who Get Things Done, Time's 100 Most Influential People in the World, the 2010 NAACP Image Award, a 2017 Webby Special Achievements Award, a 2019 Lumiere Award, and a 2020 Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Original Interactive Program. On a personal note, I'd like to thank Van for his honest reporting on Middle Eastern geopolitics at a time when so many media personalities prioritize earnings and views over the two most important core values, truth and honesty. He's been a true champion of Western values. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Van Jones.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate you, man. It's good. Hey, y'all. Good to see you, sir.
Same here.
So we're supposed to talk, and we have these cards that they gave us with questions, and so we may use them and we may not. But before we get into all that, I just wanted to get a sense from you. You're here dealing with the local situation, and I just wonder how it's been going.
Local in terms of DC local, that's what you mean, local.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, DC is DC, it's a mess. Everything is partisan, as you all know. Until very recently, I've been in DC for 22 years now. Until 10 years ago, foreign policy was non-partisan. Both parties agreed on foreign policy, but very recently it's become very partisan. And sometimes I think they do things for spite, so regardless of what's right and what's wrong. And people like me focus on foreign policy, try to always say what's right and what's wrong, regardless of party or partisanship or other sorts of politics.
Well, given that, I wonder, there's been a lot of misconceptions. One of the questions here about the October 7th attack, and you have people make this argument, what happened on October 7th did not occur in a vacuum, with the implication being that it was maybe a justified attack on October 7th, maybe an act of resistance. When you hear those kinds of arguments, how do they strike you?
I grew up in that part of the world. I've been doing this for a long time. And I don't think there's anywhere that justifies a raid that kills 1,200 people and takes 200 hostages and rapes a number of other people. I mean, there's no word in the dictionary of politics that can justify this. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted people I grew up with, especially, to understand that. And unfortunately, not all of them do. So, I mean, it's evident, right? Regardless of the context, and you just don't go and kill 1,200 people.
What about the people who say the Palestinians are being oppressed, they're being colonized, they're being brutalized, and you have to resist by any means necessary? What's wrong with that kind of reasoning?
Well, what's wrong is that this whole peace thing have been built in such a way that after we sort out all our differences, then we start talking. And I say, why not the opposite? Let's shake hands, live in peace, and then sort out the differences. I mean, there are dozens of countries with differences between them that live next to each other and, keep on talking. Look at us in Canada now, for example, right? Yeah. I mean, so I think the whole model is incorrect. I think we need ideas from outside the box. We need a new paradigm. Unfortunately, none of this is in the debate. I mean, you, Van, say them from time to time. I do say them, but...
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I hate to see Black politics abused and misinterpreted, distorted to justify despicable behavior. And, I know a little bit about left-wing politics. When I was a younger person, I was a berserkly student activist. I was woke before y'all had alarm clocks. I was on the left side of Pluto. You couldn't get any further left than I was in the 90s. And every kind of ist that you could be, if it was against the system, I was that. So I was a black nationalist and an anarchist and a Marxist and any other ist I could find, because they were building prisons all over the United States, and we just had Rodney King. And so I know a little bit about left-wing politics. And it's really wrong for them to say, if you believe in black liberation, you should therefore support what Hamas did. And I'll tell you why. Black people over a 400-year period experienced slavery, colonization, Jim Crow segregation, rapes, murders, beatings, lynchings, and fought back. And not always nonviolently, by the way. Our nonviolent heroes would be at the same level of a Gandhi, right? Dr. King, Ella Jo Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer. I mean, literally, when they got to heaven, Gandhi saluted, right? And so we're good at the nonviolent stuff. But we also engage in armed struggle. And what's so remarkable about black folks engaging in armed struggle was the high ethical and moral standards that our leaders upheld. So you take Nelson Mandela in apartheid South Africa. He's not in jail for 27 years for being a nonviolent guy. He's not Gandhi. He created Umkhonto we Sizwe, which is an armed wing of the ANC. The M plan, which was Umkhonto we Sizwe's plan, M plan, Mandela plan. So he went to jail because he was an armed insurgent. But he had rules. No rapes, no kidnapping, no women, no children. You can attack soldiers and infrastructure, and that's it. Okay? You say, well, that's great, but that's Nelson Mandela. Of course, he had high ethical. No, hold on a second. Samora Machel in Mozambique, fighting against the Portuguese. Armed struggle. Samora Machel had rules. No rapes, no kidnapping, no women, no children. You can attack soldiers and infrastructure, that's it. So, well, okay, well, it's great. So Samora Machel, that's Mozambique, it's right close to South Africa. Maybe they were, influenced. Angola. Agostinho Neto, engaged in armed struggle. But he had rules. No rapes, no kidnapping, no women, no children. You can attack soldiers and infrastructure, that's it. Amilcar Cabral, Guinea-Bissau, had rules. No rapes, no kidnapping, no women, no children. Soldiers, in fact, if you look at the entirety of armed struggle throughout that entire period, those were the standards. How about slave rebellions? Actual enslaved people. How about them? Every slave rebellion, no women, no children, and no Methodists, because the Methodists were anti-slavery. You say, well, Van, black people can't be that good. I mean, there must be some exceptions. You are correct. There are two. In the entire 400-year period, there are two. The Nat Turner slave rebellion was scorched earth. A stain on black liberation struggle. And Toussaint L'Ouverture in Haiti, fighting Napoleon, was also scorched earth. In other words, in a 400-year tradition of nonviolent and armed struggle, you have two minor exceptions, but basically black liberation struggle is highly ethical, highly moral. No black freedom fighter. You say, Nelson, what did they say? Malcolm X said, by any means necessary. Did Malcolm X kidnap anybody? Did Malcolm X rape anybody? Did Malcolm X chop up any babies? What are you talking about? Malcolm X was making a rhetorical point that black people have the right to self-defense, but not the right to atrocities. And so it is objectively despicable for Hamas, which is not a freedom-fighting organization. They are a freedom-taking organization. They're not a freedom, they're taking freedom from Palestinians. They're taking freedom from women. They're taking freedom from lesbians and gays who are Palestinian before taking the lives of Israelis. So I just think it's very important that we be very clear that there's an abuse of the black struggle. And there's abuse of black history to justify the inexcusable.
And I'll just add to what Van just said. When you compare the Israeli society to the Arab neighbors, Israel is by far more diverse than anybody else next to them. You look at the Israeli army, there's a black Israeli from Ethiopia and a white Israeli from Poland, and they're fighting shoulder to shoulder. You wouldn't see that in any Arab army. If anything, the Arab society is so monolithic that we can tell people from the first name or from the dialect on the spot, and they don't mix. So you probably heard of the Shia and the Sunni and all sorts of people, and these are not one and the same. Keep in mind that Palestinians themselves, the Palestinians of Gaza who are Hamas, and the Palestinians of the West Bank who are Fatah and the Palestinian Authority, these guys haven't talked to one another since 2007. And the first massacre that Hamas committed was not against Jews or Israelis, it was against fellow Palestinians. They just went out one day and they killed 350 Palestinians, and they threw the Palestinian Authority out of the Gaza Strip. So if you are fighting for diversity, Hamas is not your thing. And if you're fighting for LGBTQ rights, definitely not your thing, Hamas. So I totally agree. I mean, this is something that it looks funny to people like us who grew up in that part of the world. You're carrying a LGBTQ for Hamas. I'm thinking, are you crazy? So these things really, I have no idea how they pass in this country without being checked. I have a personal experience that pretty much similar to Van here. I was also Marxist leftist. If you saw me in college, I had a beard and a kufiya, and I thought this thing will sort out by tomorrow. And of course, experience after that taught me that this is not realistic. I mean, when you talk to the other side, when you see the other side as human, and this was the point of transformation in the year 2000. Israel was in South Lebanon, and it pulled out to the international border, hoping that there'll be peace. The Israelis are always requested to concede territory for peace to come. So Israel did concede in the year 2000. And people like me had the opportunity to drive all the way to the border. This is Israel's northern border, south of Lebanon. And I stood there at the fence. At the time, it was a flimsy fence, just a barbed wire between the two sides. And I was looking at it, I thought, these are regular people. And this made me curious. I spent the coming 10 to 15 years learning about the Israeli society. I learned Hebrew, became fluent in Hebrew. I started listening to Hebrew debate. I wanted to understand what they're saying in their native language, because somehow in the Arab world, you never get this debate. If you grew up in Lebanon or Syria or Iraq, the only books that you'll get about Israel would be either Chomsky or Finkelstein or, and the Mein Kampf, that's being sold too. You'll never get anything that's close to reality. And you'll never understand how the Israelis on the other side of the border think. So I was in Beirut and I was thinking, okay, so this is what we do over here. What do they do over there? Do they have students? Do they go to college? Do they have families? Do they sit together at a dinner table and discuss, small things? So eventually, that was my trip, where I came from, demonizing the other, to understanding the other is just like us. And for this, there's a question here that says, what should the two sides do for dialogue?
What do you think?
And my answer to this is that it starts with hitting the reset button on both sides, but mainly on the Palestinian side. If you can find it, hit the reset button. All what you see, the disagreement that we have, is about my grandpa or my great-grandpa in the year 1900 and something, 48, lost something and I want it back. And I'm thinking, how is this relevant? We have a set of people over here, another bunch of people over there. What can we do for these people, for these two sets of people to live in dignity and peace for everyone? And this debate, by the way, is not happening. So all you see happen is you recognize me first, I recognize you second, you started it, like you said, context. And so that's how things are. So if these people talk, I think, and get exposure, by the way, we're talking about using, black politics. They're using all kinds of politics for this, not only Nelson Mandela. They even plug out something from the old history, in Arab history, a person who was totally peaceful, and they make them into, having been resistant or something. So that's, I
think what's interesting is that this thing you're talking about, 48 and the borders and that kind of thing. I think it's harder for younger people to understand that all borders are the result of politics and war. It's not like God drew all these countries and everybody's just sort of always been in these little countries. If you look at the map of Europe, the borders, there was Austria and now it's not there, and so borders are always the outcome of politics and war. In fact, here in the United States, California, where I'm raising a family, used to be Mexico. Texas used to be Mexico. All that used to be Mexico. And then as a result of politics and war, it's now not. Now, if Mexico started firing rockets up into Texas, hey, listen, my grandfather, blah, 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 blah. How long before Mexico would be a parking lot? First rocket, second rocket? So I'm not trying to pick sides and who's right and who's wrong, but I just know that for sure borders do change. If you want to talk about a border dispute that maybe disadvantages Muslims, I don't know, India, Pakistan, that's a pretty tough border dispute. Nuclear armed border dispute. It used to be one country, when the British were colonizing it. Now it's three? It's India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. That's a border dispute. Muslims in Pakistan aren't happy about it. Nobody's mad at Hindus, though. Never hear anybody say, those damn Hindus, this is not right. We got to do something about the Hindus messing over them. That's the wrong border. Hindus, I never hear that. So there's something strange about this particular border dispute, and I don't understand it. Mexico seems to have figured out a way to deal with the fact that the border is different than it used to be. Pakistan as well. But for some reason, it seems that it's politically convenient to continue to maintain this controversy. And I wonder who benefits from that from your point of view?
Like you said, these borders, they're fluid, and even populations. And you mentioned Pakistan and India, and around the same time when the Israelis and the Arabs started fighting around the 1940s, there was a huge population swap. I think 6 million or 8 million crossed to either side. Turkey and Greece, the Greeks left Turkey and went to Greece, and the Turks left Greece and went to Turkey. And this thing happens all the time. Population swap, border redrawing. Like you said, Mexico, and we took California and Texas. And so this happens all the time. The part of the debate that I participate in, and that's in Arabic and among the Arabs themselves, I keep on saying, guys, let's define what we want out of this. Do we want the border or do we want a better standard of living? And this is where we come into Abraham Accords. This is what Abraham Accords is all about. If any one of you have been to Dubai, and you probably, have been really impressed, the reason why Dubai is impressive is these guys decided, oh, listen, we're not in war anymore. We're after good life, business for everyone. Everyone is welcome to come here, live and raise a family and work. And it became this impressive spot. And that's why they signed peace with Israel. So this applies to the other countries, the country I'm from, Lebanon. Oh, look, they're our neighbors. Do you want to keep on fighting or do you want to think about the future? Again, let's go back to the reset button, come up with policies. So fortunately, this has happened with the UAE and Bahrain and Morocco, who signed the Abraham Accords. Saudi Arabia is halfway there, trying to move reluctantly. We'll see how that unfolds. But I totally agree. It's just, this happens all the time. So let's just turn the page.
Yeah, maybe there should be some kind of compensation or whatever, but just continue to whip this up. Now, I think the other thing I'm curious about from your point of view, you mentioned, Fatah versus Hamas. Let's talk a little bit about your understanding of the state of Palestinian politics overall. Obviously, the West Bank is still allegedly governed by Fatah. They seem to be, pretty weak right now. Gaza by Hamas. I often hear people on the Israeli side say, well, we don't have a partner for peace. There's no one we can talk to. Everybody hates us. There's just no point. And it seemed like there was a period of almost hoping that you could just ignore the Palestinian question if you're in Israeli society or Israeli politics, cut a deal with the other Arab states, maybe try to isolate Iran and just kind of ignore the Palestinians. That didn't seem to work out very well, but do you think that there is no partner for constructive peace in Palestinian society? Like how do you evaluate the state of Palestinian politics and society?
Well, the partner that the Israelis got and signed peace with couldn't rein in everybody else. Couldn't train them in, so he couldn't stop Hamas. So the Israelis went to Arafat and they said, we signed a peace deal with you. Are these your guys or shall we take care of them? And of course, Arafat, being the wily, savvy politician he was, he never gave a yes or no answer. And he forced the Israelis to walk back whatever they had signed with him and started policing themselves. This is a question of trust. Is there a Palestinian that the Israelis can trust their security to or not? Apparently they tried, apparently not. The problem from the Arab side is that Fatah is under the big umbrella called the Palestine Liberation Organization, the PLO. And this is recognized by the UN and the Arab League and anybody else as the legitimate and sole representative of the Palestinian people. Fair enough. So Israel decided to talk to these representatives, except that Hamas is not part of the PLO, and they refused to join the PLO. And everyone is thinking, okay, Hamas, so what are you? And Hamas says, we want Palestine, you've probably heard this on campus, from the river to the sea, all of it, Palestinian, Islamic. So that's where they are. I think the Israelis would be happy if they can find someone they can trust. If the government of the UAE was actually the government of the Palestinians, I think Israel would give them a state yesterday. But who do you talk to? I mean, until this minute, the Palestinian Authority has not reined in Hamas. They haven't said, okay, look, we understand, we'll run Gaza the day after. The PA is not saying this. They're saying, oh, we don't know, you handle Gaza. So if you apply this to other countries, how can you deal with a country that doesn't have someone to, speak on their behalf?
Yeah, I think I don't have great answers. I have some observations. One is that, as a Christian pilgrim, I've spent a lot of time in the Holy Land, not recently, but I was in Gaza before Hamas took over. Conditions were not great. And then I spent time in the West Bank, and the IDF is rude. They'll just stop traffic for 6 hours and won't tell you why. You know, stuff is really, you know, I don't even like going to the DMV. So to get my driver's license, it takes too long. So, but I was able to find people in Palestinian society at that time, this is, you know, more than a decade ago, a lot longer, I guess, who wanted to get to a better place. They weren't with Fatah, they weren't with Hamas, they weren't Islamists, they were kind of civil society types. And they, you know, they had partnerships with moms groups, you know, the different mothers organizations, stuff like that. But they were constantly kind of kicked off balance by just the nature of the occupation in the West Bank. And they could just never, you know, like they want to have a meeting at 1 o'clock, half people can't get there till 6 p.m., you know, that kind of stuff. It's just very frustrating. And then I know that Bibi Netanyahu, I think, was in some way supportive of Hamas as a check against Fatah. So I wonder, like, the inability of the Palestinian cause to generate a Mandela, to generate, you know, the kind of political organization. Do you think Israel has some responsibility for that instability? And so how does that factor into your thinking?
So when I was in college, and like I told you, I was with a beard and kufiya and Marxist and wanted to change the whole world. We used to believe that Lebanon was in trouble because Israel was occupying the southern part of the country. Right. And our thinking was that once there's no occupation, we'll become a great country. And occupation ended in 2000. Where has Lebanon been since then? Hezbollah and everybody else. But I mean, Lebanon has full sovereignty, and it still couldn't control Hezbollah. So the point I'm trying to make here is that no one likes to live under occupation. And I'd say no one would love to occupy other people. I think the IDF is a military, and no military likes to police civilians. I've never been in the military, but that's my understanding. So if you forget about the Palestinians, if you look at the Lebanese, look at the Syrians, these guys were not under occupation. Where's the government? Where's the government that can build a country and sue for peace with Israel and, you know, make policies? So I'm not sure how much blame I can assign on either side, but from my own experience, is that even when Israelis got out of the way, the Lebanese didn't do their part. And as we speak right now, if you're following on the news, Hezbollah signed on a ceasefire. Hezbollah said, okay, we go for a ceasefire, we surrender our arms to the Lebanese state, and once we do that, Israel pulls out of, there are 5 hilltops that oversee southern Lebanon that Israel's still keeping. And since Hezbollah has signed on the ceasefire, Hezbollah has walked back its commitment. So now Hezbollah is saying, we're keeping our arms because our territory is occupied. So now we're back to the egg and chicken situation. So this, I'm thinking, okay, just surrender the arms already and we'll see what to do. In the Palestinian case, I would say, okay, Hamas, surrender your arms to the Palestinian Authority. And the Palestinian Authority is corrupt and everything. But if they are the only side we can deal with, then let's try that. This has never been the case. Even during, the height of Oslo, the peak of peace, when Rabin and Arafat were shaking hands and, kissing one another at the White House, even then, Hamas had arms and was blowing up buses in Israel. So there must be one moment when there's one Palestinian Authority that the Israelis can talk to and say, listen, this guy killed our people, you grab them. We're not policing you. I'm not trying to take sides here. I'm just describing the situation. Mm-hmm. I wish I had, a magic wand that, you and I could wave.
I would fix this country first. But speaking of, how do you interpret the reactions on October 8th in the United States? I would think that if you ask someone before it happened, there's a bunch of liberal Israelis living in kibbutz, snuggled up next to Gaza, helping them out, and a right-wing terror group goes and butchers 1,200 of them, does horrible, unspeakable things to the women, kidnaps a couple hundred of them out of a peace concert. You'd think, well, geez, I think people would be pretty upset at the horrible terror organization, and that the people who'd be most upset would be progressives and liberals, because that's our people. It's liberal, peace-loving folks in the kibbutz. That's like attacking Berkeley. And then some peace concert, that's our people. Those are progressives, those are liberals. You might have a different view of some of the people who are settlers in the West Bank, but certainly, if you're progressive, those are our people. They're living there because they want peace. They're living there because they want what we want, and they all get murdered. You would assume, sight unseen, that progressives would be outraged and say, how the hell is this anti-woman, anti-democracy, anti-gay, murderous thug group going to butcher our progressive friends? That's not what happened. How do you?
Well, this is really interesting. I mean, I had a personal experience with this. My neighbor on the street, a Jewish American, was very liberal, and he insisted this was resistance. And we're not talking about Hamas
Resistance
only.
against who?
We're talking about Hezbollah. And he was explaining to me that Hezbollah is a resistance. And I said, you know, look him up. His name is Luqman Slim. He was my close friend. Hezbollah assassinated him. And, you know, I was standing in front of my neighbor trying to argue with him as a personal, you know, someone who suffered personally from Hezbollah. I was trying to explain to him, listen, you know, I know these guys and you don't. You know, I grew up with these guys and you didn't. And they're not resistance. You know, they kill more Lebanese than they kill anybody else. And we just said, you know, the Hamas killed 350 Fatah before they went after Israelis or Jews. So I have no idea, like you said, resistance to who? I can't figure it out. But it just, sometimes it feels to me that this resistance thing has become too romantic and, you know, part of a lifestyle and, you know, just like going to a yoga class or something.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things, and this may be controversial, but one of the disadvantages that the younger leftists have is the collapse of the Marxist left and the emergence of this anarchist left. Like, for all their faults and flaws, at least Marxists had some framework or theory of power, of organization, of the state, of the party that could impose some discipline. There was some sense that there were principles to follow and there was some goal. The anarchist left, they just seem to be nuts, man. Just like they're just ahistorical, allergic to facts and reason, can't make just basic distinctions. Look, if you were talking to me about the politics in the West Bank, I think that the Israeli settlers there are mostly in the wrong in their claims and in their actions. If you're talking to me about Gaza and that part, I would say the worst people in Palestinian society are running the show and using their own people as human shields and pawns as a part of a plan that has more to do with Iran and Islamist domination than has anything to do with the national liberation struggle for Palestinian people. And these are distinctions that matter. So it's weird to me that people say, I support the Palestinians. I'm like, good, but which ones? It's like saying I support the Americans. Which ones? Like, it's a lot of Americans. Like, some suck and some are amazing. Like, I support the Palestinians. Like, which ones? What are you talking about? Like, and so I do think that there is a style of politics. You mentioned kind of a lifestyle. There's a style of politics, between 89 and 99, kind of the Marxist left kind of like collapses. In 94, the Zapatista rebellion breaks out in Mexico. So the first time you have more of a anarchist style, postmodern flavor kind of a thing. By 99, you have the battle for Seattle and all the anarchists shut down Seattle and the WTO. And then 2001, you have 9/11. And then after that, it's all either stuff that winds up being Barack Obama or stuff that winds up being BLM and a bunch of anarchist stuff. And nowhere in the middle is there like a sensible, approach just to world politics. And I think it's really hurt this generation. I think these young people are more than not well-intentioned. And I recognize myself in them. But when I went to the protest at UCLA, I saw two things, worse than I thought and better than I thought. Just trying to evaluate this kind of protest phenomenon. At UCLA, I saw images on social media of Jewish students trying to walk across campus and being stopped. And the Jewish students were saying, well, we're Jewish students, we want to come across, and they were just stopped. Well, see, I live about 18 minutes from there. And I said, if the campus administrators don't have enough sense to put a stop to that foolishness, and the cops don't, I will. So I got in my car and I drove over there, because there's no damn way in the city I'm raising my children that Jewish students are going to be stopped from doing anything they want to do. When I got there, it was actually different than it looked like on social media. It turned out that these were equal opportunity offenders. If you didn't sign their little petition saying you agreed with all their demands, they wouldn't let anybody across, black, white, Jewish, or otherwise, and it turned out there were Jewish students on either side. Okay, so that was one of those things where social media makes things look worse than they actually are. So I was comforted to know that if they were obnoxious, they were equally obnoxious to everyone who didn't agree with them. So I thought that was better than I thought. But it's actually worse than I thought, because I decided to hang around. So I just signed a little thing, I don't care, get back here, It's like, first of all, lots of free food, cool tents, rather offensive graffiti.
Music.
A lot of music. Yeah. And a lot of good kids, most of whom were enjoying camping and free food, which honestly, I can't object to that. It's But whereas in most of the movements I've been a part of, you had good kids or good people, good community people in the middle of the protest movement. And then around the edges, you always have some nuts and some assholes and some extremists around the edges. But the people who are really trying to deal with gun violence or police brutality or the labor fight or the strike or whatever it is are always the good people in the center. And then around the edges, some nuts. This was not that. This was the opposite of that. Around the edges were just all these good people who don't like war and don't like seeing dead Gaza babies and that type of stuff. And the closer you got to the center, the worse the people got. So by the time you got to the center of this protest, the people who were in charge, these were really, really bad actors. Faculty and students. You could not get them to say one bad word about Hamas. You cannot get them to say one kind word about the victims of October 7th. They had a script that they were using. Once they figured out that you're sophisticated, then suddenly they would tell everybody not to talk to you. They would send over a couple people, especially Jewish students, who would just parrot the party line. It was kind of using Jewish students as like a heat shield for really despicable set of ideas. So I left the campus at UCLA disturbed. I was disturbed that people thought that there was kind of some generalized discrimination and harassment against Jewish students, which wasn't actually happening. There were Jewish students on both sides. But that we were missing the deeper point, which was that a very despicable, objectively pro-Hamas terror group was pulling into its orbit a bunch of well-meaning young people who didn't know any better. And so I say all that to say, I think that this protest phenomenon, I think it's wrong to cast all of it as pro-Hamas, all of it is anti-Jewish, all of it. I think sometimes we can overstate the deficiencies here. But we can also, I think, understate and underestimate how consciously manipulative and dangerous the rotting core of this leadership is, from my point of view.
So let me add to this that the line here, and what these guys try to make it murky and make it disappear, is that you can be opposed to the politics of the state and the government of Israel all you want, and no one will come after you. You cannot be opposed to the existence of the state of Israel. And that's the difference. And that's, if you talk to Israelis, they're fine. You know, you can say these settlers are crazy burning things. That if you know Israeli friends like my friends, they'll say yes, you know, and most of them cannot even join the IDF because they have a, you know, bad record and stuff. And most of them actually instigate, you know, others against the IDF and stuff. So we're not talking about the, I'm not trying to stereotype here, just saying in general. But the point that these guys were making on campus was against the existence of the state of Israel. And this does not happen to any other state. You wouldn't find, you know, other countries, someone saying, I don't think Turkey should exist. You know, the Turks, if you know their history, they came to this land in the year 1500, not a long time ago. And it really, the irony is that so many times I'm reading Turkish authors and they're making fun of America as occupying a native land and taking over. And I'm thinking, look who's talking. So these things happen all the time. Now, back to these protests and Hamas and their supporters. If you want to say, listen, I'm not okay with the way we're dealing with the Palestinian Authority or with the checkpoints policy or any other policy, that's fine. That's a debate we can have. But just to go again and again and say this is a colonial settler state that is not worthy of existence, and then this gets projected against the US itself.
Right.
And then the US government is not good enough. And I think this is what we're dealing with. This is where all the anarchists you're talking about, you know, why not? No Israel, no US, no West. And the irony is, and this is really interesting to me, they like the global South. And I'm thinking, so these governments are bad, but Putin and Xi and Iran and these guys are really good. So it's really, you know, I mean, to me, it sounds like spite, right? I mean, spite and partisanship, and you're just taking sides, as if you're watching two teams playing football and picking one of the two. You know, I mean...
With no principles.
Yeah, I mean, in sports, you just pick your team. There's, you know, no principle behind it. So this line, I think, you know, was missing all the time. And I tried sometimes to explain it, but, you know, with all the noise.
I mean, and I think it's important that all people, not just Jewish people by themselves, but all people are unmovable on this point, because you can have a country that has bad laws. The United States had bad laws for a long time. Nobody says cancel the United States. You can have a country that has a bad prime minister, a bad president.
Absolutely.
Look at our president. But nobody's saying cancel the United States. You can have a bad war if you don't like this war, the way it's being prosecuted. We had Vietnam. Nobody said cancel the United States. See, the only country that because they have policies you don't like, or a prime minister that you don't like, or a war that you don't like, you say cancel the whole country, only the Jews. Only the Jews. There's no other people in the world that because you don't like their policies or their leadership or how they're dealing with the conflict, you want the whole country canceled. I mean, look at China and what China is doing to the Uyghurs. If you care about Muslims so much, there's no Muslims in the world being treated worse than the Uyghurs. Nobody's saying a damn word about it, and nobody's saying cancel China. And I think part of the problem that I think for the Jewish community is that for the past 50 years, there really has been almost a holiday from history for the Jewish community. In that for 3,000 years, the Jewish community gets chased out of every country. As soon as they get a solid foothold, suddenly here comes a pogrom, here comes the Cossacks, you have to sleep with a go bag. You never know when something bad's gonna happen. Obviously it culminates with, the worst industrial extermination of humans ever in the Holocaust. And then after that, the world is so shocked and revolts that the Jewish community is able finally to build a state and a strong middle class here. And 50 years is a very short period of time for the Jewish people, but it's a long period of time for humans. And so in the living memory of most people, the Jewish community has been very strong. It's been successful, it's been prosperous, it's built an incredible state out of literally nothing almost. And so people walking around, if you're 50 years old, 40 years old, 30 years old, 20 years old, all you've seen is Jewish success and Jewish strength. So you have no appreciation of Jewish vulnerability. In fact, Jewish vulnerability seems like a weird thing to even, 3 years ago, somebody said the Jewish people are feeling vulnerable. You say, about what? Right? And I think it's very important for people who are not Jewish to champion the cause that, look, it may look to you because of the microsecond that you've been paying attention that Jewish people are strong and powerful and successful. But, math matters. There are 1 billion plus Chinese people in the world. God bless them. There are 1 billion plus Africans in the world. 1 billion plus Africans. God bless us. There's 1 billion plus Indians in the world. God bless them. There are 2 billion Muslims in the world. There are 2 billion people on TikTok. There's only 15 million Jews left in the whole world. Half of them are in Israel, and half of them are people of color from places like Tunisia and Egypt. 15 million left in the whole world. There's 40 million black people just in America, and 1 billion back home. There's only 15 million left. This is a precious, precious people. And the world owes them more love and protection and respect than we could possibly muster. The other 8 billion who have benefited so much from the civilization. You look at the art, you look at the philosophy, you look at the jurisprudence, you look at the culture, you look at all of that contribution from this small embattled group. And you look at the fact that nobody's been able to beat the Jewishness out of them in that cultural DNA of repair the world, tikkun olam. No matter what, you couldn't take that away from them. Running from here, running from there, still telling their children, repair the world, repair the world. As soon as they get 1 inch of air, help the stranger, help this cause, help that cause, everywhere around the world. And usually the thanks was, get the hell out of here. But you could chase them out of the country, you could chase the Jews out of the country, but you couldn't chase the Jewishness out of the Jewish people, and the whole world benefited. So this is strange talk in a world where we mainly focused on skin color. in talking about privilege and oppression, mainly focused on gender, mainly focused on income. And we left out the oldest, longest prejudice in the world. So we've disabled the past 20, 30, 40 years, a generation, now 2 generations of Americans to even understand anti-Jewish bigotry. Because it's very hard to tell a 23-year-old black kid from a tough background that somebody who doesn't have black skin, maybe they have white skin, somebody who is male, and someone who went to college and has money can be oppressed. The whole way we designed people's understanding of oppression was if you have brown skin, you're oppressed, no money, you're oppressed, a vagina, you're oppressed. But you mean to tell me somebody could be a straight, white, skin-having male, actually go to college, have money, and still be oppressed? What? What you talking about, Van? And so this is a huge, I think, failure on the part of progressives. And I think we have to, you talked about hitting the reset in the Holy Land. I think we have to hit the reset here and remind people that we're lucky to have the few Jews left that we do, and the world owes them all the protection in the world.
By the way, speaking of here, let me say that what you see over here, Arab Americans and Muslim Americans, what they demand happens over there, is their platform. This is not something that anyone supports over there. So over here, they want a binational state for both Jews and Arabs. Over there, they either want the whole thing like Hamas, or they want 2 states. There's not a single Palestinian who's not in North America that supports a binational state. So when you look at these people over here, don't assume they represent opinion or people over there. I mean, I'm from there and I know it. And let me also say that, and this is as an Arab, if you grew up as an Arab, there are 430 million Arabic-speaking people in 21 countries. And the Palestinians have their own authority, so that's 22. And these 430 million people, their language is not threatened. You know, there are hundreds of satellite stations and radios and media in Arabic. Their religion, mostly Islam, is not threatened. Their livelihoods, they have enormous mass of land from the Atlantic all the way to the Indian Ocean and the Gulf. This is not the case for the Jews in that part of the world. Like Van said, there's only 7 million of them in Israel. Their language is threatened if this country goes away. The religion is threatened. Their heritage, everything. These are not 2 equal kinds of threats. You know, Israel is really under threat. It is tiny compared to the rest of the Arab landmass. So why is this fight keeping everyone behind? I mean, on the Arab side, the Arabs have been obsessing over this absurd conflict. And in the Arabic language, what I say all the time, even if this was our right, 100%, what's the point of fighting a fight that's keeping everyone behind and at war, instead of conceding this little speck of land, let these people live? The last point I'll say about this, the only thing that the Arabic-speaking world is losing is diversity. So when I was growing up in the eastern part of Lebanon, the town I grew up in, 1/3 of it was Christian Catholics. Now, if you go to Baalbek, there are 3 Catholics left. So there used to be Jews, there are no more Jews in these Arab countries. There used to be Christians, no more Christians. The Kurds can't really live. You probably heard the news last week, the Alawites of the coast in Syria were suffering massacres. So diversity is suffering. The Arab mass is becoming one color, all of them just Muslims. And this is bad for us, for Arabs. We need diversity, let alone, like we're saying, successful kind of diversity. You know, Israel, the 9 million Israelis have won at least 15 to 20 Nobel Prizes. The Arabs have won 10. And half of them are for peace, like for Arafat and political stuff. So Israel is an asset. If the Arabs think about it, it is, top-notch technology economy, top-notch colleges, Nobel laureates, just, concede the land and make and benefits out of this asset. And this is the point that, we try to make, and I'm not the only one, of course. You mentioned these civil society types that you met in the West Bank and Gaza. The only problem for people like us is that it's impossible to say this back home. It's just, you go, you get killed the next day. I haven't set foot in Lebanon since 2019. So how do you convince the moderates? How do you build a moderate movement in a country like Lebanon or Iraq? I mean, this is nearly impossible. In 2022, the Lebanese held election. Now, you might think that all the Shia Muslims support Hezbollah. This is the number. 17% of the Shia went to the polls and voted against Hezbollah. That's 1 in 5 of the Shia oppose Hezbollah itself. Now, we never know this because the system is gerrymandered in such a way that Hezbollah monopolizes everything. So it's time to start thinking of these little things, I mean, they make a big difference, and I'm happy we're discussing them now. But
I'm so curious, what do you think about Iran in terms of its role in the region? Is it overstated? Iran backs Hamas, Iran backs the Houthis, Iran backs Hezbollah. I think in the U.S. we kind of see all three of these organizations basically just being cat's paws or extensions of Iran, which of course Iran's not Arab, it's Persian, and they're Shia, and most of these groups are lean more Sunni. So in my view, I think Iran is up to no good, and I think Iran is a massive threat, and I think Iran is responsible for a lot of the mess over there, and frankly, a lot of stuff online over here. But I could be seeing it wrong. Do you see it more as these guys are bad guys anyway, and they're just lucky to get money from Iran? Or do you see Iran as the major motivator? How do you make sense of it?
No, I totally agree with you. The Iran regime, again, not the Iranian people, the Islamist Iran regime, because the Iranian people is a proud people with a civilization of thousands of years.
The Islamic Republic of Iran.
The Islamic Republic regime, and all it takes is to have a few bad actors and they can spoil everything for everyone. Now, as someone who grew up with Hezbollah, and I know these guys, half of the leadership of Hezbollah was with the Lebanese Communist Party. And when communism collapsed and money dried up coming from Moscow, guess where money started coming from? Tehran, because that's when the revolution took over. So most of these people, they're not really for the ideology. Everyone talks about ISIS all the time. I'm half Iraqi. My father is from Baghdad. And everything that ISIS did was exactly what Saddam used to do. And the only difference they had was that they called themselves Muslims with longer beards. And the reason they did that was because after Saddam collapsed, there was no more money coming from the state and from oil revenue. They needed donors. And the donors they could find were people who support Islamism. So don't think that these people are really ideological. If the money turns, they turn, I mean, they're just trying to make a buck. The majority of them, you probably find 10% of them that are hardcore ideological. But everybody else, and this is the issue we're facing in Lebanon right now. Money is still flowing from Iran to Lebanon. Hezbollah is using the money to rebuild its base, rebuild its capabilities. May 2026, next year, there'll be election in Lebanon. Hezbollah knows this. They're using the money to make sure that they win the election. And when we say money and election in Lebanon, it's not like here. You don't finance your campaign. Over there, you actually buy votes. You take the money, you give them to people. People vote for you. And which means the more money you have, the more guaranteed your election is.
It's interesting to me because my big concern here in the United States is the splitting of the Black-Jewish alliance, which now just seems to be, in tatters. And I think that for the younger an African American is, the less aware they are even of that history, and that's a failure on the part of my generation of African Americans to explain this stuff very well. But it's almost like a hidden history. It's like a hidden history of the country. This partnership. And in 1909, the United States was not a democratic republic. It was not a constitutional democracy. It was an apartheid terror state. The United States sort of, starts off as a slave state on stolen land. Then they fight a civil war to upgrade to apartheid, terror, lynchings, and blacks and Jews' backs are against the wall in 1909. There is no meaningful constitutional democracy here for blacks and Jews in 1909. And then this miracle happens, where because the cultural DNA of the Jewish community is repair the world, and the cultural DNA of the black community is justice for all. Not justice for some, justice for all. It's remarkable that a people as oppressed as black people are have this huge heart for everyone. The black community sticks up for immigrants, even though we're not mostly immigrants. We stick up for gays and lesbians, even though the black church is still anti-gay in theology, but in practice, those preachers will fill up buses to go vote for a party that will defend gays, because even if our theology says they're not right, we don't want them to be treated wrong. It's just a remarkable culture of justice for everybody. The backbone of the progressive movement in this country has always been black people because of that quality. Well, take the cultural DNA of black folks, justice for all, and the cultural DNA of Jewish folks, repair the world. If you put those two strands together, you get this double helix of hope for humanity. And it is a remarkably consistent theme. Starting in 1909, there was this Black Jewish Alliance that's formed that calls itself the NAACP, Black Jewish Alliance. And these people have a crazy idea. And the idea is that they can somehow turn this former slave state on stolen land that's now an apartheid terror regime into a democratic republic. Doesn't exist yet. It's just an idea in the minds of these kind of black and Jewish activists. Next year, 1910, another group of blacks and Jews sit down and create something called the Urban League. And if you look from that moment, every decade going forward for the rest of the century, disproportionately, blacks and Jews on the front line together. Black folks are usually not Jewish, Jewish folks are usually not black, and people who are both black and Jewish, doubly blessed. Right there on the front lines, deepening and defending democracy every decade. And it's not just the 60s. People act like, the 60s. There were Jewish scholars in the 30s in Europe, in the 40s, who, when Hitler started murdering people, scholars could come to the United States, but they had to get a visa, and a university had to accept them. Well, there was still so much anti-Jewish hatred in the United States. Those scholars couldn't find a home here. So it was the black colleges that raised our hands and invited those Jewish scholars and saved those Jewish scholars. That's a hidden history, blacks and Jews together. Everybody knows about Dr. King and the rabbi and the kids who went down south. My godmother, Dottie Zellner, was a Jewish student who was a member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And she was in charge of picking which kids could go south in '64, Freedom Summer. And she actually picked two of the Jewish students that were murdered that summer in Mississippi and never got over it. But people act like it stopped in the 60s. It never stopped. Literally never stopped. You look at the Jewish community's relationship to the black community. The only people with white skin from Europe who ever came here who primarily helped us and didn't hurt us. Irish people came here. They weren't even considered white until they joined the police forces and started beating the hell out of black people. Then they became white. Italians, same thing. Jewish people, only people that came over here primarily had a relationship with us that wasn't about that. So you look right now, any black college, take the annual report, turn it over on the back. Jewish name, Jewish name, Jewish name, donors. Go to any black community, go to the public defender's office. Attorney Gold, Jewish name after Jewish name. Go to Teach for America. All these Jewish kids go to fancy schools. What do? They run into tough neighborhoods and Teach for America I'm trying to get out of. They're trying to get in there to help prepare the world. Prepare the world. Every black candidate, you ask them who was the first person to hold a fundraiser for you in their living room. Every time it's a Jewish supporter. This alliance has been an unbroken bond. Now, this is not to say that all blacks loved all Jews and all Jews loved all blacks. That's bullshit. That never happened. That's not true. You always had some black people didn't like Jews. You always had some Jews didn't like black people as well. Everybody's got some asshole uncle or terrible cousin. That's not the point. The point is that the best in both communities always work together. Always. And it didn't just benefit black people or Jewish people, it benefited the whole world. In fact, you could go so far to say that what you now call American democracy is disproportionately co-authored and co-created by blacks and Jews on the front line fighting for democracy. If you like American democracy, thank a black and thank a Jew. You're welcome. We created that together, disproportionately. And so if you want to mess up democracy, if you want to roll back democracy, if you want to undo the West, one of the things you should do is split blacks from Jews. Go online, launch a massive online propaganda disinformation campaign targeted at black people, targeted at black young people, and drive them away from their Jewish allies. Because once you split these two groups apart, who have been the twin pillars for progress, then it's very easy to do anything else. And I see now some Jews moving in what looks to be an anti-black direction under the name of anti-woke, anti-DEI, et cetera. Now, DEI has got 1,000 problems, but it sounds anti-black to us. And then you see a lot of black people moving in a direction that sounds anti-Jewish and anti-Israel. This is the most dangerous development, because if you don't know how you got democracy, you don't know how to keep it. And if you don't know that it was our parents and our grandparents holding hands when it was hard that got us here, when you start letting go of each other's hands, you don't know the damage that's going to come behind that.
Well, along these lines, I'd say that I grew up in Lebanon, and Lebanon is a country where you take affirmative action and you multiply it by 1 billion, and that's how the country is built. So each position in government is reserved to one of the 18 sects that make the country: Shia, Sunni, Druze, Alawis, everyone. And the Christians have 7 or 8 churches and dominions, and then the Muslims also do. I'm married to someone who's not from my religion, and our marriage would have been impossible in Lebanon. I mean, the court wouldn't even write the contract for you. You have to go to a country like Cyprus to get yourself what they call the civil marriage. And one of the main reasons that we left the country and we moved here was that we wanted to get married. And of course, as products of the American University of Beirut, these liberal ideas, that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, we learned these things and we wanted to live them. And we came here with the idea that this is where everybody is just like everybody else. And this is one of the disappointments that over the past 5 or 10 years, my family and I get called out even when we don't want to. So our children, we raise them to speak Arabic. We speak Arabic at home. And we go to a restaurant having dinner, and we're speaking Arabic. And when we order something and the waitress says, but it has pork in it, she's being nice. That's fine, but just get this. but it has pork. And sometimes we feel uneasy. I go into some place and they read my name and they immediately say, oh, the prayer room is on the right side. So this thing happens over and over again to me and to my children. And we feel, can you just stop reading our names or looking at our faces? Can you just assume that we're just like everybody else? So this thing, I understand that sometimes people need affirmative action. But sometimes they don't, and if they do, they'll ask for it. We're not asking for perks. The way I'm raising our children is that we say all the time, we are Arab inside the house only. And the minute we step outside the house, we're American. Not Arab American. And because, the reason we say this is it becomes a political movement, and then it means we're asking for perks, for a special seat in Congress or in government. I think you know this, that when Kamala became vice president and her seat became vacant, there was a disagreement between Latinos and blacks over the seat, right?
Yes.
This is exactly like Lebanon. and I don't want the US to become this way.
I am, how old are your kids again?
They're 10 and 14.
So that's right, the 10-year-old daughter and 14-year-old
14-year-old
son.
son, yeah, that's correct.
What is their response and reaction to all this, October 7th and the protests? Are they aware of it, or are they mainly, playing soccer and not paying attention?
They are. I mean, they live with me, so they have to be aware. Yeah. And we discuss these things at the dinner table, and we're trying to make them understand that their opinion does not have to match their identity. So if we're Arabs and we're Arab American, it doesn't mean all of us have one opinion, because that's how others treat you. Oh, you're Arab American, so you must like Hamas. And this is one really, I'm not sure how ironic or funny the story is. The teacher went into my son's class in the morning, and she said, kids, today we're going to study about 9/11. And the whole class turned back and looked at my son. And all of these kids were born at least a decade after 9/11. And you think that's, people will look at you a certain way. And what we're trying to explain to our kids is that no matter how they look at you, this is who you are. Just, be like everybody else. Liberty, free opinion.
Yeah. It's funny you're talking about being in school. I remember, I guess I was in, sixth grade. I don't remember, but I remember when Iran took the hostages at the embassy, and
1979.
79, yeah, sure. It's like probably about sixth grade, and there were yellow ribbons around every telephone pole in my little town, Jackson, Tennessee. I mean every telephone pole. We prayed for those hostages in public schools every morning. They had a little ticker every news program, 17 days, X number of days, blah, 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 blah. It was the most important thing in the world. And so people always ask me, like, well, why do you wear the yellow ribbon? I said, because we have hostages. What are you talking about? That's what you do when you have hostages. And the fact that that is not the reaction, to me, has been the most telling and the most chilling thing. We have American hostages right now, and Americans don't care, and there's only one reason that can be. And so, I hope that, both your kids and mine grow up in a world where some of this stuff is sorted out a little bit better.
Amen.
Look, the little clock says 000, so that means we got to go, and some of you guys got to pee. So, but I will say this, to the young people who are here. It's not such a bad thing to face a big challenge. It's not. It's not such a bad thing to have to straighten your back up and reach in your shirt and pull your star out. and know that somebody may not like that. Breakdowns become breakthroughs when you use them right. And your parents and your grandparents and your great-grandparents, all the way back, had to deal with people who were hateful, ignorant, mean-spirited, and wrong. And thank God they didn't back down. And because you had to stand up to hateful people for generations, you have created something beautiful on this earth. A strong people, a beautiful people, a generous people, resourceful people. No pressure, no diamonds. No pressure, no diamonds. So now it's your turn. That's all. That's all. It's very important that you know that nothing is happening to you. It's happening for you. We need strong Jews now in this world. We need Jewish people who are strong, who are smart, who are tough, who hold on to those values, who keep trying to repair the world. I wouldn't want anybody to go through the things my people have gone through or yours. But it's what you do with it. It's what you do with it. And I think the people who have created this forum tonight are doing the right thing, and I'm proud to be a part of it. So thank you. Good night. Good night.
Good evening, everyone. As the Director of Events for FOG, I want to extend my gratitude to all of you for being here tonight. Your presence here shows a shared commitment to learning, having real conversations, and understanding each other, something we need now more than ever. A special thank you to Van Jones and Hussain Abdul-Hussain for their dedication to educating others and fostering meaningful discussions that shape the world around us. Your insights and expertise are invaluable, and we are truly grateful for your time and perspectives. I also want to recognize the incredible team here at the University of Michigan whose hard work and dedication made tonight's event possible. Finally, to the members of FOG, especially our executive team, your dedication and effort ensured that this evening came together in the way that it did, and I couldn't be more thankful. Tonight's discussion has given us valuable insights into the complexities of the Israel-Hamas war and the ongoing efforts to achieve lasting peace. We hope you leave this auditorium with new knowledge, fresh perspectives, and a deeper understanding of the historical and current efforts toward coexistence. Looking at past examples of successful peace-building efforts allows us to reflect on what has worked and how we can apply those lessons moving forward. If history has taught us anything, it's that peace is not passive. It is built through dialogue, empathy, and a willingness to seek common ground. As we process what we've learned tonight, we should ask ourselves, how can we, both as individuals and as a community, help build a future where understanding comes before division? Discussions like these are just the beginning. The real impact comes from what we do next. Whether it's continuing to educate ourselves, engaging in thoughtful conversations, or challenging narratives that divide rather than unite, we all have a role to play. We cannot let hate, division, and disinformation drown out respect, peace, and truth. True peace isn't just about avoiding conflict. It's about having open conversations and working toward a shared vision for a better future. Let tonight be the start of that journey, not the end. Thank you.